we don't have the problem because we're not subject to the collective management of collecting societies. So software producers and game producers don't have to go to these, very old-fashioned bodies who actually enforce the national restriction across the EU. The EU doesn't have an internal market for copyrighted works. It's 27 mini markets, and when you compare with the 350 million consumer market the US has, then you can imagine that, being competitive for companies that produce copyrighted content, and in the sense, more audiovisual and music, not sofware like us, but, those who are managed by collecting, it's very difficult. Yeah, you can argue about that, but let's say, being software, you're not subject to the collecting society. The day you're subject to the collecting society, come see me and we have a chat. See how it means for your companies. Now, so that's for the territoriality. We agree, and there's a big problem in licensing of content. Now, if you go on iTunes, you can only have movies if you have a British credit card or an American credit card. If you're a Belgian and you have a Belgian credit card, forget about accessing TVs or other, audiovisual content. So there is clearly something that can be done. And the same is true for piracy, online piracy. There's been a lot of discussion in France with the Hadopi and the graduated, la réponse graduée. It's happening in the UK. The same thing, similar goals. It's happening in Italy. It's being drafted in the law in Korea, now in Taiwan, in Australia, in Japan. So everywhere, people and copyright industry are thinking, what can we do to stop this, unlawful copying of our works on the internet? And one of the response that has been brought and has been examined by this parliament is this notion that you could, filter the internet and spot every unlawful exchange of protected content. And every time you spot something wrong, you actually disconnect the user or the person who is involved in this transmission of content. So this has been a very central piece of discussion in all these countries, but also in this parliament as part of the telecom package. And that's this famous or infamous, depending where you look at it and how you look at it, Article 138, on which this legal opinion leaked today is about, and basically saying the need for a due process and a fair process, which is embedded in this article, is not necessarily compatible with the European competence of the Parliament, particularly with regard to the Article 95 of the treaty, and the notion that some of these criminal related procedures are outside of the remit of both the Commission and the Parliament. That's a very interesting development, which may lead to perhaps the abandonment of this article by many MEPs, and perhaps the final adoption of the telecom package, which is in a way held hostage due to this interesting provision. So maybe in a word of conclusion, I was in Paris a couple of weeks ago. I was invited to the Assises du Numérique, where the Ministry of Culture, French Ministry of Culture, has been a big proponent of this graduated response, was there. And they asked me, what do you think of this French graduated response, the filtering using technology and so on and so forth? And I said, it's very interesting, because the French legislator has put a lot of effort into a new legislation which relies on the assumption that technology in itself can be a silver bullet to piracy, and that filtering technology can basically resolve the problem of piracy. And of course, that technology can also, that's also the assumption of I'm going to finish in a second, thank you. Technology in itself can also help, find who is trading and disconnect this person.
So basically what you're saying is technology has its limits?
Yeah, of course, yes, but what I want to say
with regard to copyright protection.
Absolutely. What I want to say is that it's a very paradoxical situation, because if technology can do all these things, if it could do all these things, then what you would be looking at is not anymore the copyright as it is, but a right to remuneration, simply because if you can spot somebody who is making illegal exchange online and disconnecting, then a fortiori you can actually charge this person for this exchange. So then you would have a major transformation of copyright with all this exclusive right into a mere right to remuneration, because even if the content is illegal, once it is input into the internet and you scan it and you charge the person who is exchanging this file, then you can pay the right holder. So, but you forget about the right of making available, the right of communication of all the exclusive rights are gone and replaced by a right of remuneration. So I told the French, it's very interesting, the country with such a big tradition of copyright and cultural diversity. That
Francisco, so basically what you're, I mean, I'm trying to summarize to get to the final thing. You're saying is the technology has its limits there, and even if it would be able to do it, we should maybe question it whether it is suitable to do it.
Well, that's, you know, if you want to summarize, you always reduce things to a very simple dimension. But I'll let the other speaker, you know, speak and take the speaking time. And if there are questions, I'm happy to develop. Thank you.
Well, I guess, Christian, this is some of the ideas that you get from the industry. It will be interesting to have your point of view as a European parliamentarian on this.
Right. Well, I represent the Pirate Party, as some of you may know. And contrary to what many perhaps believe, we are pro-copyright. We want to keep copyright legislation in Europe. But in order to do that, it needs to be reformed. That should be perfectly obvious to anybody. Today's copyright system is not working. It's got no acceptance, or very little acceptance among the general public. Trying to enforce it simply doesn't work. So today's copyright, we say, is unsustainable, but we do want to keep the copyright system. So, okay, how do we want to reform it? Well, first of all, we want to keep copyright for commercial purposes, roughly like it works today. But, of course, we want to limit the terms of protection. Today, it's life of the author plus 70. That is clearly ridiculous. Because, as you said in your introduction, the purpose of copyright is to encourage new works. It's to make it possible and profitable for people to invest money in the production of new works. Well, how does an investor think? Well, no investor in the world says that, okay, I'll make this investment and I need 120 years to get a return on investment. I mean, that simply doesn't exist. An investor, I mean, reasonable horizons for an investment in countries, probably a year or two, but we're nice guys. We're saying 5 years would be enough, or possibly 10 or something, from the publication of the book. That would make sense. If we made this reform, this would free up our cultural heritage from the 20th century, because as you are very well aware in the relation to the Google Books project, almost everything that was created during the 20th century is illegal to use or to spread. Although most of it is unavailable, it's illegal for anybody to make it available. I mean, that's clearly not good for Europe, for European culture, that we have that situation. So that's one part of it, shortening the terms of protection.